Walking in the Footsteps of the Buddha. Author Thich Nhat Hanh. Book 1. Chapter 1. Walking just to walk. Under the shadows of the green bamboo, the young bhikkhu Svasti sat cross-legged, concentrating on his breath. He had been meditating for more than an hour in the bamboo forest monastery, while hundreds of other bhikkhus were also practicing under the shade of the bamboo trees or in their own thatched huts. The great teacher Gautama, whom people affectionately called the Buddha, lived in the monastery with nearly 400 disciples. Although crowded, it was very peaceful. 40 acres surrounded the monastery, and many varieties of graceful bamboo from all over Magadha were planted there. Just a 30-minute walk north of the capital city of Rajagaha, the bamboo forest monastery had been given to Buddha and his community by King Bimbisara 7 years earlier. Svasti rubbed his eyes and smiled. His legs were still tender as he slowly uncrossed them. 21 years old, he had been ordained 3 days earlier by the Venerable Sariputta, one of the Buddha's senior disciples. During the ordination ceremony, Svasti's thick brown hair was shaved off. Svasti was very happy to be part of the Buddha's community. Many bhikkhus were of noble birth, such as the Venerable Nanda, the Buddha's brother, and Devadatta, Aniruddha, and Ananda. Although Svasti had not yet been introduced to these men, he had noticed them from afar. Even in faded robes, their noble bearing was unmistakable. It will be a long time before I can be friends with men of such noble birth, thought Svasti. And yet, even though the Buddha himself was the son of a king, Svasti felt no gulf between them. Svasti was an untouchable, lower than the lowest and poorest caste according to the system of discrimination among the people of India at that time. For more than 10 years, he had tended water buffalo, but for 2 weeks now, he was living and practicing with monks from all castes. Everyone was very kind to him, offering him warm smiles and deep bows, but he did not yet feel at ease. He suspected it might take years before he could feel completely comfortable. Suddenly, a broad smile emerged from deep within him as he thought of Rahula, the Buddha's 18-year-old son. Rahula had been a novice in the community since the age of 10, and in just 2 weeks Rahula and Svasti had become best friends. It was Rahula who taught Svasti how to follow his breath during meditation. Rahula understood the Buddha's teachings well, even though he was not yet a bhikkhu. He needed to wait until he was 20 before he could receive full ordination. Svasti reflected on the time, just 2 weeks before, when the Buddha came to Uruvela, his small village near Gaya, to invite him to become a monk. When the Buddha arrived at his home, Svasti was out with his brother, Rupak, taking care of the buffaloes. His 2 sisters, Bala, age 16, and Bhima, age 12, were there, and Bala recognized the Buddha right away. She began to run out to find Svasti, but the Buddha told her it wasn't necessary. He said that he and the monks traveling with him, including Rahula, would walk to the river to find her brother. It was late afternoon when they came upon Svasti and Rupak scrubbing down their 9 buffaloes in the Narrandera River. As soon as they saw the Buddha, the young men ran up the bank of the river, joined their palms to form a lotus bud, and bowed deeply. "You've grown so much," the Buddha said, smiling warmly at Svasti and his brother. Svasti was speechless. Seeing the Buddha's peaceful face, his warm and generous smile, and his brilliant, penetrating eyes moved him to tears. The Buddha wore a saffron robe made of patches sewn together in the pattern of a rice field. He still walked barefoot as he had 10 years before, when Svasti first met him not far from this very spot. 10 years before they had spent hours sitting together on the banks of the Narrandera and beneath the shade of the Bodhi tree, just 10 minutes' walk from the river bank. Svasti glanced at the 20 bhikkhus behind the Buddha and saw that they, too, were barefoot and clad in patched robes of the same color. Looking more closely, Svasti saw that the Buddha's robe was a hand length longer than those of the others. Standing next to the Buddha was a novice about Svasti's age who looked at him directly and smiled. Buddha gently placed his hands on Svasti and Rupak's heads and told them he had stopped by to visit on his way back to Rajagaha. He said he would be happy to wait while Svasti and Rupak finished bathing the buffaloes so they could all walk to Svasti's thatched hut together. During the walk back, Buddha introduced Svasti and Rupak to his son Rahula, the young novice who had smiled so beautifully at Svasti. Rahula was 3 years younger than Svasti, but they were the same height. Rahula was a Samanera, a novice, but he dressed much the same as the older bhikkhus. Rahula walked between Svasti and Rupak, handing his alms bowl to Rupak and placing his arms lovingly around the shoulders of his 2 new friends. He had heard so much about Svasti and his family from his father that he felt he already knew them. The brothers basked in the warmth of Rahula's love. As soon as they arrived at Svasti's home, the Buddha invited him to join the bhikkhu community and study the Dharma with him. 10 years earlier, when Svasti had first met the Buddha, he expressed his wish to study with him, and the Buddha had agreed to accept Svasti as a disciple. Now that Svasti was 21, the Buddha had returned. He had not forgotten his promise. Rupak led the buffaloes back to Mr. Ramble, their owner. The Buddha sat outside Svasti's hut on a small stool while the bhikkhus stood behind him. With earthen walls and a thatched roof, Svasti's tiny home was not large enough for everyone to come inside. Bala told Svasti, "Brother, please go with the Buddha. Rupak is even stronger than you were when you began tending the buffaloes, and I am quite capable of taking care of the house. You have looked after us for 10 years, and now we are ready to be on our own." Sitting next to the rainwater barrel, Bima looked up at her big sister without saying a word. Svasti looked at Bima. She was a lovely young girl. When Svasti met the Buddha, Bala was 6 years old, Rupak 3, and Bima only an infant. Bala cooked for the family while Rupak played in the sand. 6 months following their father's death, their mother passed away in childbirth. Just 11 years old, Svasti became the head of the household. He found a job tending water buffaloes, and because Svasti was a good worker, he earned enough to feed his family. He was even able to bring buffalo milk home for little Bima. Realizing that Svasti was asking her about her feelings, Bima smiled. She hesitated a moment and then spoke softly, "Brother, go with the Buddha." She turned her face away to hide the tears. Bima had heard Svasti mention his wish to study with Buddha so many times, and she truly wanted him to go, but now that the moment had arrived, she could not hide her sadness. Just then, Rupak returned from the village, and hearing Bima's words, "Go with the Buddha," he understood that the time had come. He looked at Svasti and said, "Yes, brother, please go with the Buddha," and the whole family fell silent. Rupak looked at the Buddha and said, "Venerable Sir, I hope you will permit my brother to study with you. I am old enough to care for our family." Rupak turned to Svasti and, holding back his tears, said, "But brother, please ask the Buddha if you can come back and visit us from time to time." The Buddha stood up and gently stroked Bima's hair. "Children, please eat now. Tomorrow morning, I will return for Svasti so we can walk together to Rajagaha. The bhikkhus and I will rest beneath the Bodhi tree tonight." As the Buddha reached the gate, he looked back at Svasti and said, "Tomorrow morning, you do not need to bring anything. The clothes you are wearing are enough." That night the four siblings stayed up late. Like a departing father, Svasti gave them his last advice on taking care of each other and the household. He embraced each of them for a long time. Unable to hold back her tears, little Bima sobbed while her oldest brother held her. But then she looked up, breathed deeply, and smiled at him. She didn't want Svasti to feel sad. The oil lamp cast a dim light, but it was enough for Svasti to see her smile, and he appreciated it. Early the next morning, Sujato, Svasti's friend, came to say goodbye. The evening before, she had seen the Buddha when she was on her way to the river bank, and he told her that Svasti would be joining the order of monks. Sujato, the daughter of the village head, was 2 years older than Svasti, and she, too, had met Gautama before he became the Buddha. Sujato gave Svasti a small jar of herbal medicines to take with him. They spoke only briefly, and then the Buddha and his disciples arrived. Svasti's brother and sisters were already awake to see their brother off. Rahula spoke gently to each of them, encouraging them to be strong and to take care of each other. He promised that whenever he was nearby, he would stop in Uruvela to visit them. Svasti's family and Sujato walked with the Buddha and the bhikkhus to the river bank, and there they joined their palms to say goodbye to the Buddha, the monks, Rahula, and Svasti. Svasti was overcome with both fear and joy. There was a knot in his stomach. This was the first time he had ever left Uruvela. The Buddha said it would take 10 days to reach Rajagaha. Most people traveled more quickly, but the Buddha and his bhikkhus walked slowly and with great ease. As Svasti's pace slowed down, his heart quieted. He was wholeheartedly immersing himself in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha, and this was his path. He turned around for one last glimpse of the only land and people he knew, and he saw Sujato and his family as mere specks merging with the shadows of the forest trees. It seemed to Svasti that the Buddha walked just to enjoy the walking, unconcerned about arriving anywhere at all. So it was with all the bhikkhus. No one seemed anxious or impatient to reach their destination. Each man's steps were slow, balanced, and peaceful. It was as if they were taking a pleasant stroll together. No one ever appeared tired, and yet they covered a good distance each day. Each morning they would stop in the nearest village to beg for food. They walked along the streets in a single line with the Buddha at the head. Svasti came last, just behind Rahula. They walked with quiet dignity, observing each breath and each step. Once in a while, they would stop while villagers placed offerings of food in their bowls. Some villagers knelt by the side of the road in respect. As the bhikkhus received the food, they quietly recited prayers for the people. When they finished begging, they slowly left the village to find a place beneath some trees or in a grassy meadow where they could eat. They sat in a circle and divided the food equally, careful to fill anyone's bowl that was still empty. Rahula filled a jug with water from a nearby stream and respectfully carried it to the Buddha. After the Buddha joined his palms together to form what looked like a lotus flower, Rahula poured the water over the Buddha's hands and rinsed them clean. He did the same for everyone else, coming last to Svasti. As Svasti did not yet have a bowl, Rahula placed half of his own food on a fresh banana leaf and gave it to his new friend. Before eating, the bhikkhus joined their palms and chanted together. Then they ate in silence, mindful of each bite. When they finished, some bhikkhus practiced walking meditation, some did sitting meditation, and others took a short nap. When the hottest part of the day had passed, they took to the road again, and they walked until it was nearly dark. The best places to rest for the night were undisturbed forests, and they walked until they found a good place. Each bhikkhu had his own cushion, and many sat cross-legged in the lotus position for half the night before spreading out their robes and going to sleep. Each bhikkhu carried 2 robes, the one he was wearing and another to use as protection against wind and cold. Svasti sat in meditation like the others and learned to sleep upon the earth using a tree root for a pillow. When Svasti awoke the next morning, he saw the Buddha and many of the bhikkhus already sitting peacefully in meditation, radiating profound calm and majesty. As soon as the sun rose over the horizon, each bhikkhu folded his extra robe, picked up his bowl, and began the day's journey. Walking by day and resting by night, it was 10 days before they reached Rajagaha, the capital of Magadha. It was the first time Svasti had seen a city. Horse carts pressed through streets lined with crowded dwellings, shouts and laughter echoed everywhere. But the silent procession of the bhikkhus continued, as peacefully as when they strolled along the quiet riverbanks or between country rice fields. A few of the city dwellers paused to watch them, and a few, recognizing the Buddha, bowed deeply to show their respect. The bhikkhus continued their calm procession until they reached the bamboo forest monastery, just beyond the city. News spread quickly throughout the monastery that the Buddha had returned, and within moments, nearly 400 bhikkhus gathered to welcome him back. The Buddha did not say much, but asked about everyone's well-being and meditation practice. He entrusted Svasti to Sariputta, who was also Rahula's spiritual instructor. Sariputta was the novice master of Bamboo Forest Monastery and watched over the studies of nearly 50 young monks, all of whom had been in the community for less than 3 years. The abbot of the monastery was a monk named Kondana. Rahula was asked to introduce Svasti to the ways of monastery life, how to walk, sit, stand, greet others, do walking and sitting meditation, and observe his breathing. He also showed Svasti how to wear the monk's robe, beg for food, recite prayers, and wash his bowl. For 3 continuous days, Svasti did not leave Rahula's side, so that he could learn these things well. Rahula put his whole heart into instructing Svasti, yet Svasti knew it would take years of practicing before he would be able to do these things in a relaxed and natural way. After this basic instruction, Sariputta invited Svasti into his hut and explained the precepts of a bhikkhu. A bhikkhu was one who left his family in order to follow the Buddha as a teacher, the Dharma as the path which leads to awakening, and the Sangha as the community that supports one along the path. A bhikkhu's life was simple and humble. Begging for food helped foster humility and was also a means to be in contact with others and help them see the way of love and understanding which the Buddha taught. 10 years earlier, beneath the Bodhi tree, Svasti and his friends had listened to the Buddha speak about the path of awakening as the path of love and understanding, so it was easy for him to grasp all that Sariputta told him. Though Sariputta's face appeared serious, his eyes and smile radiated great warmth and compassion. He told Svasti that there would be a precept ceremony to formally accept him into the community of bhikkhus, and he taught Svasti the words he would need to recite. Sariputta himself presided over the precept ceremony. About 20 bhikkhus attended. The Buddha and Rahula were there, adding to Svasti's happiness. Sariputta silently recited a gatha, and then shaved off several locks of Svasti's hair. He then gave the razor to Rahula, who completed the task of shaving Svasti's head. Sariputta gave Svasti 3 robes, a bowl, and a water filter. Because he had already been taught by Rahula how to wear the robe, Svasti put it on without difficulty. He bowed before the Buddha and the other bhikkhus present to express his deep gratitude. Later that morning, Svasti practiced begging for the first time as an ordained bhikkhu. The monks of Bamboo Forest Monastery walked into Rajagaha in several small groups, and Svasti was part of the group led by Sariputta. After taking just a few steps out of the monastery, Svasti reminded himself that begging was a vehicle to practice the way. He observed his breathing and took each step quietly and in mindfulness. Rahula walked behind him. Although he was now a bhikkhu, Svasti knew that he had considerably less experience than Rahula. He resolved with all his heart to nurture humility and virtue within himself. Chapter 2. Tending Water Buffaloes. The day was cool. After eating the noon meal in mindfulness, each bhikkhu washed his own bowl and placed his cushion on the earth to sit facing the Buddha. The many squirrels that lived in bamboo forest mingled freely with the monks, and some climbed up into bamboo trees to gaze down at the gathering. Svasti saw Rahula sitting directly in front of the Buddha, and he quietly tiptoed there and placed his cushion next to Rahula's. They sat together in the lotus position. In that serene and dignified atmosphere, no one spoke. Svasti knew that each bhikkhu was following his breath mindfully, waiting for the Buddha to speak. The Buddha's bamboo platform was high enough for everyone to see him clearly. The Buddha had a relaxed yet majestic air like that of a lion prince. His eyes filled with loving compassion as he looked out over the assembly. When his eyes came to rest on Svasti and Rahula, the Buddha smiled and began to speak. Today I wish to tell you about the work of tending water buffaloes, what a good buffalo boy must know, and what he must be able to do. A boy who cares well for water buffaloes is a boy who easily recognizes each buffalo under his care, knows the characteristics and tendencies of each one, knows how to scrub them, care for their wounds, chase mosquitoes away with smoke, find safe paths for them to walk, love them, find safe and shallow places for them to cross the river, seek fresh grass and water for them, preserve the grazing meadows, and let the older buffaloes serve as good models for the younger ones. Listen, bhikkhus, just as a buffalo boy recognizes each of his own buffaloes, a bhikkhu recognizes each of the essential elements of his own body. Just as a buffalo boy knows the characteristics and tendencies of each buffalo, a bhikkhu knows which actions of body, speech, and mind are worthy and which are not. Just as a buffalo boy scrubs his animals clean, a bhikkhu must cleanse his mind and body of desires, attachments, anger, and aversions. As he spoke, the Buddha's eyes did not leave Svasti. Svasti felt that he himself was the source of the Buddha's words. He recalled how, years before, while sitting at the Buddha's side, the Buddha would ask him to describe in detail his work of tending water buffaloes. How else could a prince raised in a palace know so much about buffaloes? Though the Buddha spoke in a normal voice, each sound rose clear and distinct, and no one missed a word. Just as a buffalo boy cares for his buffalo's wounds, a bhikkhu watches over his six sense organs, eyes, ears, nose, tongue, body, and mind, so that they do not become lost in dispersion. Just as a buffalo boy protects his buffaloes from mosquito bites by building fires to create smoke, the bhikkhu uses the teaching of becoming awake to show those around him how to avoid the afflictions of body and mind. Just as the boy finds a safe path for the buffaloes to walk, the bhikkhu avoids those paths that lead to desire for fame, wealth, and sexual pleasure, places such as taverns and theaters. Just as a buffalo boy loves his buffaloes, the bhikkhu cherishes the joy and peace of meditation. As the boy finds a safe, shallow place in the river for the buffaloes to cross, the bhikkhu relies on the Four Noble Truths to negotiate this life. As the boy finds fresh grass and water for his buffaloes, the bhikkhu knows that the four establishments of mindfulness are the nourishment leading to liberation. As the boy preserves the fields by not overgrazing them, the bhikkhu is careful to preserve the relationships with the nearby community as he begs offerings. As the boy lets the older buffaloes serve as models for the younger ones, the bhikkhu depends on the wisdom and experience of their elders. O bhikkhus, a bhikkhu who follows these 11 points will attain arhatship in the span of 6 years of practice. Svasti listened in astonishment. The Buddha had remembered everything he had told him 10 years before, and was able to apply each detail to a bhikkhu's practice. Though Svasti knew the Buddha was teaching the entire assembly of monks, he also had the distinct impression that the Buddha was addressing him directly. The young man's eyes did not wander even once from the Buddha's countenance. These were words to hold in one's heart. Of course, there were terms such as 6 sense organs, for noble truths, for establishments of mindfulness, which Svasti did not yet understand. He would ask Rahula later to explain these terms, but he knew he understood the essential meaning of the Buddha's words. Buddha continued to speak. He told the assembly about choosing a safe path for the buffaloes to walk. If the path was overgrown with thorns, the buffaloes would get cuts which could become infected. If the buffalo boy did not know how to take care of wounds, his buffaloes could become feverish and even die. Practicing the way was the same. If a bhikkhu did not find a proper path, he could become wounded in mind and body. Greed and anger could further poison his wounds until they grew so infected that the way to enlightenment became hindered. The Buddha paused. He motioned for Svasti to come up and stand beside him. Svasti stood with his palms joined while Buddha, smiling, introduced Svasti to the assembly. 10 years ago I met Svasti in the forest near Gaya, just before I realized the way. He was then 11 years old. It was Svasti who gathered armfuls of kusar grass, which I used for a cushion to sit beneath the Bodhi tree. Everything I have taught about water buffaloes, I learned from him. I knew he was a good buffalo boy, and I know he will be a fine bhikkhu. Everyone's eyes were on Svasti, and he could feel his ears and cheeks tingling and becoming very red. The men all joined their palms and bowed to him, and he bowed back to them. The Buddha then concluded the Dharma talk by asking Rahula to recite the 16 methods of conscious breathing. Rahula stood, placed his palms together, and recited each method in a voice as bright and clear as a bell. When he finished, he bowed to the community, and the Buddha stood up and slowly walked back to his hut. After he did so, all the monks in the assembly took their own cushions and walked slowly to their own spot in the forest. Some of the monks lived in huts, but many slept and meditated outdoors, beneath the bamboo trees. Only when it rained very hard did they pick up their cushions and seek shelter in the residential huts or lecture halls. Svasti's teacher, Sariputta, had assigned him to share a space outdoors with Rahula. When Rahula was younger, he had to sleep in a hut with the teacher who served as his guardian, but now he had a spot under the trees. Svasti was happy to be with Rahula. Late that afternoon, after sitting meditation, Svasti practiced walking meditation alone. He selected an empty path to avoid encountering others, but he found it difficult to remain concentrated on his breathing. His thoughts were filled with longing for his brother and sisters and the village at home. The image of the path leading to the Narrandera river rose clearly in his mind. He saw little Bhima lowering her head to hide her tears and Rupak caring for Ramble's water buffaloes alone. He tried to chase these images away and focus on nothing but his steps and breathing, but the images continued to flood him. He felt ashamed that he could not devote himself to his practice, and he felt unworthy of the Buddha's trust. After walking meditation, he thought he would ask Rahula for help. There were also several things the Buddha had said in his Dharma talk that morning that he had not fully grasped, and he was sure Rahula could explain them to him. Just thinking about Rahula encouraged and calmed him, and he found it easier to follow his breathing and each slow step. Svasti had not yet had a chance to look for Rahula when Rahula came looking for him. He led Svasti to a seat beneath a bamboo tree and said, "This afternoon I met the elder Ananda. He would like to hear all about how you first met the Buddha." "Who is Ananda, Rahula?" "He's a prince of the Sakya line and the Buddha's cousin. He became a monk 7 years ago and now he is one of the best disciples. The Buddha loves him dearly. It is he who looks after the master's health. Ananda has invited us to come to his hut tomorrow evening. I too want to hear all about the time the Buddha was living in the Gaya forest. Hasn't the Buddha already told you?" "Yes, but not in detail. I'm sure you have a lot of stories to tell." "Well, there isn't really much, but I will tell all I remember. Rahula, what is Ananda like?" "I feel a little nervous." "Don't worry. He's very kind and friendly. I told him about you and your family, and he was delighted. Shall we meet in this spot tomorrow morning when we go begging for food? Now I must wash my robe so it will be dry in time." As Rahula stood to leave, Svasti tugged lightly at his robe. "Can you sit for just a while longer? There are some things I want to ask you. This morning the Buddha spoke about 11 points a bhikkhu must follow, but I can't recall all 11. Can you repeat them for me? I can only remember 9 myself. But don't worry, tomorrow we can ask Ananda." "Are you sure the elder Ananda will remember all of them?" "Positive. If it had been 111, Ananda would still remember. You don't know Ananda yet, but everyone here admires his memory. It's incredible. He can repeat flawlessly everything the Buddha has said without leaving out even one tiny detail. Around here, everyone calls him the most learned of all the Buddha's disciples. So whenever someone forgets something the Buddha has said, they seek out Ananda. Sometimes the community organizes study sessions in which Ananda goes over the Buddha's basic teachings. Then we're very lucky. We'll wait and ask him tomorrow. But there is something else I want to ask you. How do you quiet your mind during walking meditation? Do you mean to say that during your walking meditation other thoughts came into your mind? Like thoughts of missing your family?" Svasti grasped his friend's hand. "How did you know?" That's exactly what happened. I don't know why I miss my family so much this evening. I feel terrible, but I don't seem to have enough resolve to practice the way. I feel ashamed before you and the Buddha." Rahula smiled. "Don't be ashamed. When I first joined the Buddha, I missed my mother, my grandfather, and my aunt. Many nights I buried my face in my cushion and cried alone. I knew that my mother, grandfather, and aunt missed me, too. But after a while, it was better." Rahula helped Svasti up to a standing position and gave him a friendly hug. "Your brother and sisters are lovely. It's only natural for you to miss them. But you'll get used to your new life. We've got lots of work to do here. We must practice and study. But listen, when we get a chance, I'll tell you about my family, all right?" Svasti held Rahula's hand in his own 2 hands and nodded. Then they parted, Rahula to wash his robe and Svasti to find a broom to sweep the paths clear of bamboo leaves.